Hey, this is Tanya. Welcome to Girl Call Me, the podcast for, by, and about Black women. We hope you enjoy today's conversation as we chat about all things health, relationships, and life. We'll have you laughing, testifying, and most importantly, feeling seen and whole as the beautiful Black woman you are. Now on to the nonsense. Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening. So Jessica, every episode we should really do a pulse check. So, how are you feeling today? Let me take your pulse.
Oh, how am I feel? First of all, it's raining in LA.
Well,
And normally I would be nervous about saying that because it would put a time and a date stamp.
uh-huh.
Like, but it's
Which
raining
is
so
what I
much
was
lately.
thinking. I was like, why is she talking about
Well,
the weather?
because it's been raining so much lately. I was just talking to my sister. She said maybe you need an episode on seasonal depressional
Yes.
disorder. I'm like, maybe because in California this didn't used to be our problem.
And people in the East Coast will have a slight problem with our privilege and the saying, yeah, normally we do not live in Seattle or, the Northeast. We're just having a
Right.
little rain right now. We could survive, I think. Don't you think?
Yeah. I mean,
You're gonna make it. You're gonna make
I
it.
choose to live somewhere where this is not an issue. But here we
Okay.
are, so I'm doing fine,
Oh
making it through,
god. A little seasonal depression, but
making
but
it
that's
through.
making it through. Anyway, let's move
Anyway,
on.
here we are. But I
Before we
can
kind
I
of
just
dive
say
into the topic, huh?
yeah, can I just say before we dive in, like, thank you for listening. I have been so
Yes.
excited and my heart has been warmed listening and
Mm,
seeing comments, listening to voice notes from friends, seeing comments on YouTube and
yes.
Insta. Um, it is so
Truly
amazing.
grateful. Lots of gratitude overflowing. And I'm like, when we started this, I was like, girl, if five people listen, I'm gonna be grateful. But now I'm hearing about people taking walks and listening, relaxing and just listening with a cup of coffee. And thank you.
Yes, thank you. Glad we can join you.
Mhm. So today we are going to be diving into a topic that might be triggering for some, and it might be triggering for myself as we talk about it. And it's
Might be triggering for some people who did research for this podcast, it might be triggering for some of
and
those.
maybe yes for those who did. Um, and so that's the topic of hypochondria versus hypervigilance. Is there a difference?
Well, I was thinking that, like, is it versus or is it just both of them? Because you could probably have a healthy dose of both. So they're not
We
really in
can.
competition with each other necessarily.
Yeah, I think, and if you have both, what is the impact on your life? And
Right.
I think it's important, I think, to talk about it because, like I said, I think we talked a little bit in last episode about anxiety and stress and how it takes itself and manifests itself in many different ways. So yeah, so when you look at the definition of hypochondria, it says it's an illness anxiety disorder. It's a mental health disorder that involves an intense fear of having or developing a serious illness. Interesting.
So that's a diagnosis.
Right. And then when you
Right.
look at the idea of the hypervigilance, it seems like it's more rooted in trauma. So if you're hypervigilant, you're constantly looking around. And it actually almost feels more like an action. It's actually rooted in PTSD in a sense of hypervigilance is a chronic state of heightened alertness and awareness. Now, let's
Mhm.
think about how and why, pe- particularly people of color, Black people, would have a heightened awareness.
Yeah, I think when we talk about this subject with Black women, it's important to note that PTSD, yeah, it's, something over 9% of African Americans have been diagnosed with PTSD, compared to, on average, it's about 6.8% of non-Hispanic white Americans. We have a higher rate of PTSD because there's a higher rate of us being victims of traumatic and violent crime. There's, exposure to racism, which we know already can
Yeah.
increase people's risk of developing PTSD. So I think when we talk about hypervigilance, and probably I would venture to believe that people don't notice it in health probably as much as they do in other things, that hypervigilant piece, right? Of like, you're not going to catch me. I got to stay on top of something. I got to do more. I got to do, like, no one's going to get ahead of me on this type of thing. I'm never going to be
Right.
caught in X situation again, right?
Right. Yeah. When I think about my upbringing and my family background, um, I think you and I have talked about the fact that being hyper vigilant was something that it feels almost like I have to be because, I think even starting at age 10, um, you know, my grandma was diagnosed with lung cancer at 50, which I was about 10. And for a majority of my adult life, until she passed away when I was 19, there was almost like every 6 months she was basically doctors were like, she has 6 months to live. She has 6 months to live. So there is sort of in me that let's get ahead of it. Let's get ahead of it. And use as someone, there's many people out there who have been caretakers, and I was a caretaker at a very young age with my grandmother who had chemo, had radiation, who had had bouts of, in my family, it's not just the thinking about the doctors, but thinking about what herbs can you do in order to sort of like, if the doctor's not going to help me, let's try an herb. And so yeah, so for me, it's sort of the way in which I've always thought. Stay
Right.
alert. Make sure you avoid it. What am I avoiding? I don't know what I'm avoiding, but I'm making sure it doesn't catch me.
Right. You look at people who are Black people being more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes, Black people, Black women having a higher rate of white women in developing certain types of breast cancer.
Like
Um,
40%. 40%.
right. Fibroids, we know that's, I had a conversation with a girlfriend the other day who was like, I don't know a woman in my family or my husband's family, this was a Black woman, who has a uterus, right?
Hmm.
So you have all of these kind of stories that
Yeah.
have been told to you, and that causes a certain sense of vigilance, if you will, where you kind of know what's coming. And it's like, okay, fine. I know I'm gonna need to take care of this. It's that strong Black woman piece. So let me
Right.
get ahead of this. Right.
Yeah. And just think about how much you trust your doctor. Thinking about, in some ways, when you go to a doctor's office, you're not just going and saying, I trust my doctor and I'm just not going to. So, no, you kind of go in. I go in with my own stats, I go in with my own awareness and
I
understanding.
know I
You
know
know I
you
do.
do.
I know.
You have a
With my own
PowerPoint.
I have my PowerPoint presentation for him or her. And when you think about that hypervigilance thing, if, you know, as my grandma used to tell me, nobody's gonna love you as much as you're gonna love yourself. And
Right,
so nobody's gonna care for yourself as much as you're gonna, so you have to be aware. And I
right.
think it can be dangerous in a sense that it can create anxiety and other stuff, but I don't know if we have an option as Black women. Thinking about the word hypochondria, I think it can be dangerous because when a Black woman or Black man or someone goes into a doctor's office and says, I feel like I have this, we can be easily dismissed and said, well, are you sure you have that? Or you have this level of pain? You heard so many stories about people going in, even during the pandemic, and doctors sending them home or saying, well, you're fine. Maybe you're not as much pain, and not giving them the medication that they need. So the hypochondria sort of narrative, sort of, I think we have to be really careful with that.
Yes, we do have to be careful with the narrative because it's a diagnosis. So having behaviors that exhibit some smidgen of hypochondria is not the same as like this extreme fear of something's wrong with me, I'm dying. This, like that's a kind of a space that is reserved for a diagnosis. But I think that there is, and I think you're right, there's this gaslighting piece of
Yeah.
like that is triggering with, you know, hints of hypochondria. I mean, I know I feel that of, it's like that boy who cried wolf type of thing, right? It's like, gosh, if I tell someone like what I'm really thinking about what probably is really wrong with me, then if something is really wrong with me, no one will believe me. Or, like that,
Right.
you could get yourself in that type of cycle um pretty
How are
quickly.
you how do you, thinking about how and, thinking about how hypervigilance shows up for you, how does it show up for you? Not saying that you have it, but I'm just asking a question since we
Yeah,
are
I
doing this
mean,
episode.
yeah, hypervigilance, I mean, hypochondria, I think shows up more for me,
Okay.
personally, for sure, right?
The first
I
step is admitting.
I think I I'm a storyteller by nature, so,
Mm.
like, give me 3 or 4 data points, and I'm
Mm.
off to the races, right?
Yeah.
I am connecting, you ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, where he has all
Mhm.
those, like, pieces of papers connected by a
Yes.
string?
Yes.
I
I'm
feel like that's
visual.
what happens. It's like, is that my throat? Oh my god, is that my back? Is that
Lord,
my hold on a second,
girl.
is that where is that? Okay, how long have I had that? Let me write a note, let me track this in 4 days. I mean, it can get pretty wild.
Right. Why is my heart
Um,
rate there? Why did my
right,
heart rate just peak?
and
Oh, Lord
don't
Jesus.
don't let me get actual data points that are not qualitative. And if you let yourself go there, and I will go there sometimes, lots
Yeah,
of times.
Google Doctor is a very dangerous place
Girl,
to be. And now they
don't
have the data points. Okay, if you can go through and fill out a survey, and then they'll somehow give you like 10 things that you
right,
might be. Not that
right.
I've gone there ever, but yes,
You know
it's a
do
struggle.
you know how how shameful is it when you, like this is really outing myself, but when you're, like, Googling something like, "Is blank a symptom of blank?" Right?
Yes.
And you do it, and you're like it pops up, like, the first one, you're like, "See? It is," and then it's like, "Oh, no, 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 that's my search history. That's not actually a finding.
Okay,
Okay,
girl,
I've been here before."
if your search history is now diagnosing you, it's time to walk away from Google. But no, it's serious. I mean, I think that there's so much, and like I said, you're either on one end of the spectrum or the other. You're either like, I'm too busy as a Black woman to go to the doctors to do anything, or you might just be like, based on my history, there are diseases out there. It doesn't help that we work in healthcare. There are diseases out there, and I want to get ahead of it. I want to make sure that I can be here as long as possible. I encourage people to go to the doctor. So, my cholesterol has been high, and I even just got a blood test back, and I was like, "Oh, okay, my cholesterol's still high." And so I met with a new cardiologist, and she told me about a test that I knew nothing about, calcium score. You spend $150 and they will let you know what the calcium buildup is in your heart, which tells them whether you are basically have heart disease or about to get heart disease. And that will inform her, which is a data point, will let her know whether she needs to put me on a medication. No other doctor has ever suggested that. They were like, we need to put you on a drug, we need to put you on a statin. And so in some ways, that's good. So I did the calcium scan, and I should find out the results next week. But in some ways, it's also there's so many people out there that goes, "What is this calcium scan that this girl is talking about, and why do I?" So I mean, knowledge is power, but knowledge is also, in some ways, some people could think knowledge is too much power. Knowledge and too
That's
much
right.
knowledge is a dangerous thing.
Well, it's what you do
because
with
I
it,
got
right?
nervous. I get scared because of it. So now I'm like paranoid.
Right,
I'm like,
right,
am I? So then you start going down the rabbit hole of,
right.
well, if I have calcium scores high, then do I have heart disease? And I just felt a thing in my leg and my feet were this and next to you know, I'm
That's
like
what I mean about
stressed out.
collecting those data points. You walk around just with a bag and putting those data points in there, just
Mhm.
looking for a story points.
Looking
You
for
walk
a story. I'm not looking for a story. Let's just be clear.
for lots of people for lots of different reasons. Going to the doctor is a really triggering experience. And then, you know, when you get in the doctor, they tell you something. And I feel like people either hold on to what they told you as like, okay, this thing is the truth and I need to like full speed ahead with this thing. Or people are like, I don't trust anything you're saying anyway. And like you said, it's out of your mind.
Right.
How does holding on to something like that for you, does that make you feel more in control of like, okay, I got this one data point, so now this is going to help slow my spin, or does it just like ramp up the spin?
I think it depends on what the point is. What is that data point? If it's my
Because like how much
cholesterol,
did you Google calcium scan after you were there?
well, when she suggested I have it, yes, I have a full I knew the video I had a video. I knew exactly what exactly they were gonna do. I had the
Right.
instructions and so forth. So I knew everything. But there are some data points that I might just my cholesterol's been high for a minute. And so I'm like, well, is it? Am I good? But yeah, my heart, but then I use another school, I use another data point that my heart rate is relatively in good points and my blood pressure is good. So I'm like, well, I might be all right. So I think it's such a contradiction in a sense of
Yeah.
there is a contradiction that happens because I want all of the data points, but the question is, what am I going to do with those data points?
Right.
And
And what's the healthy
what's a
like
healthy
what's the
balance? We would love to hear from the audience. What is the healthy balance? And you know what? We need to have an expert come and really shed some light because clearly we don't have all the answers. But
No. But if you go back to what Nicole Week said when she was here in our stress episode, we know we know what's not healthy is holding on to all of that and
hmm,
carrying it around. Like that is what we know for sure. Like we know for
yeah,
sure getting the information, yes, now we're informed. But what we do with the information and how we process the information
is important.
is, I mean, that's the at the core of the hypervigilance conversation is like, how are you managing it healthily? Like, right?
Right. And what she said is you can have all of the data in the world. And if you're not listening, at the end of the day, if you're not listening to your body
Right.
and taking care of it in however ways that is, whether it's listening to your body and going, you know what, I really don't feel well, so I'm going to go to the doctor. Or if you're just collecting data points, it's meaningless in the end of the day. And so, and also, are those data points really accurate?
Yeah, you're listening to your body, but at the same time, you're like spiraling out of control and causing your body to react. So you have to like be honest with yourself in that conversation, right? I can listen to my body. This happens to me all the time when people tell me, "Oh, just breathe. Just breathe.
Oh, I hate
You'll
that. I don't
you'll
need to, you
calm
to
you'll calm
listen.
yourself down." I'm like, "Do you wanna know how many times I have done breathing exercises and I look at my heart rate and it's higher after than when I
Right.
started?" Like, just breathing doesn't work for me, and so if I'm just listening to my body in that situation, like, that's not gonna do me any good. It's
Or
actually
why don't you
like
open that Calm app and just do some meditation? That's the other one that gets on my nerves.
let me tell you about my Calm app that I will fall asleep in a 6-minute piece. I'm asleep by 2 minutes in. I'm like, "You know what? This is a
Maybe
problem."
that's what it's supposed to do for you. It's supposed to put you to sleep, get you to rest.
Well, usually I'm listening to it when I wake up, so maybe
Oh,
not, but
okay, girl. I need you that's something else. That's another episode. So when we're thinking about hypochondria and hypervigilance, What, in some ways, have we learned, and what can we help other people based on what we our knowledge? How can we help other people?
Yeah. For me, I think COVID was a huge, um, aha for me in
Mm.
my experience with little bouts of hypochondria. Everyone had something at some point that could potentially be a symptom of something.
Right.
And I learned very early on, like, there is so much going on. If you try to diagnose everybody at every moment in time, like, this is not helping you. So
Mhm.
for me, what I have learned is, you know, I have to just focus on myself. There is People will present you with a story that seems like you're ready to jump into a judgment and tell someone to go do something, and they should be really doing this and you should be doing that. And I think what I've learned is, mm, reporting the news to people is important, and pulling myself out of the commentary, because the commentary is what spins you out of control, right? Just
Wow. That's really, I don't know, interesting. 'Cause I'm 'cause I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. And it's interesting, you mentioned COVID, and I was like, "Ooh, yes." For people who are hypervigilant and have a scent of hypochondria, I say a scent, I'm just gonna use that, just a scent of hypochondria, just a little bit. Uh, COVID was a rough road for the girl.
yeah,
And I still wear a mask everywhere I go. I still wear an air purifier when I go in public places. You can knock on wood. I have not gotten COVID. Probably one of the few, one of the few. But it did sort of shed a bright light on, thinking about my life, thinking about my family, thinking about my grandmother and her journey. And, to equate it, I don't want to equate it to cancer, but it was so much her journey of really struggling with health and thinking about what I didn't want. I didn't want to get it. And I was so obsessed with it. And it actually is still, I mean, I think 4 years later, it's still a hard thing for me to go out in the public and just be all happy, and that's hard for someone like me who was a very social person, I mean, I was hosting a party every week, right? But yes, if someone tells me that there's something going on with them, I'm like, why are you sniffling, why are you coughing? And then someone said, my wife, I mean, people in my life really would rarely tell me that they have something unless it's like kind of bordering on, well, yeah, I may need Tanya's advice on finding a doctor because it's serious. Because they know, unlike you, who's going to be like, listen, call me if you need some help. I'm
okay.
actually actively Googling and searching and sending them a reference. And you know what? I have been known to call and make somebody an appointment.
Look, I'm saying that I am moving more in that direction, but I started in the "let me get all up in your business" space. So,
I'm still,
moving in that dir
there's nothing wrong with being in people's business and saving their lives. Save
so
people's
moving
lives.
so what I'm saying is, like, I feel like I'm moving in the right direction,
Is that the
but
right direction?
I mean, look, there is there's a fine line between being in someone's business and
Is it
being
someone's business? See, that's the thing
supportive.
I don't, that
Well, with
seems
a
but
communicable disease is a different thing, okay? So, like, yes, if someone's up in your face and you,
right.
like, coughing and hacking, that's a very different story than if someone's, like, just out for their normal walk and they get a text message from Tanya that's like, "Hey, girl, you said your heart rate's been high. Have you done a calcium score test yet?" And you're like, "Okay, why is she all the way in my
Didn't
arteries at this
did I
point?"
did I not send you that text when I got left the
You did. So I'm saying
right, so what are
that
you
was a
talking
poor
about?
example.
Are
That
you
was a
trying to
poor
tell me something subtly? Okay.
No, I don't need to be subtle to tell you you're a busybody, a health busybody.
I
But
am a health
but
busybody. I don't
but
care about
like
nothing
you
else,
said,
but I do care about your health.
that's a smart thing. I mean, I do think that part of health literacy, like, is supporting each other, right? Is saying if someone tells you that a symptom and you know that, like, hey, that's something that sometimes goes unchecked, like, yeah, then of course say something. That's not what I mean. I just
Yeah,
mean not
I'm
everyone
joking.
wants to be thinking about their not everyone
The
wants to be in the
calcium
spiral.
score.
Right, and not everyone wants to be in the spiral that I find myself in, and that's what I have to remember. Not everyone wants to
Yeah.
get off the phone with me and Google, right?
Like I said, I've saved a few people's lives, but it's fine. I get your point. I get your point. I'm in several
I've
people's
saved
wills,
it. Not a
but
God complex. Not a God complex.
I have no problems. I have no God complex. No, I mean, yes, you know what? These are, I think there is a happy medium between the both of us. But there's also, if people choose to not be either one of us and choose to just mind their business and
Right.
literally not, go to doctors because only when they're not well, that's fine too. I think,
Yeah.
there's not a perfect way. There's not a perfect science to how to deal with health. But I do
Yeah.
think, and I would say, for Black women, it's important for us to kind of care about each other
Yeah.
and be my sisters. I'm a be there for my
Yeah.
sister, and I'm gonna be
Exactly.
like, you might not know about this calcium score, but
Yeah.
go get that calcium score because there's too many of us dropping dead of heart attacks and nobody
Yeah.
knows why.
I wanna make sure that everyone in the thing I do for sure is I want to make sure that every person in my network, in my orbit, knows that if they have a question, I'm the person that they can come to because I'm not because I know the answer, but because Imma help them find it, and
You will
that's
help
just
you
a
find
commitment
it.
I have. I'm just trying not to proactively suggest something where I've maybe made some missteps in the past. I'm just being honest.
Right.
Perhaps
Yeah.
I have
And
overstepped
I
my own, welcome in some places before.
And you know what? I appreciate how you've evolved, and I'm still going and I'm happy to be kicked out of folks'
Evolving,
place.
evolving.
Evolving, and I stay in the stand of, "Listen, you might be mad, but I may save your life."
That's hypervigilant, and that, folks, we spent 35 minutes getting to what is hypervigilance. She just told you.
It's Tanya. It's
She
me.
said, "I may be bothering you 30 times, but if that 31st time I save your life, it was all worth it,
Listen.
right?" Great.
Listen, that was that. So yes, we are going to. Our plan is to bring an expert. Maybe it's a therapist because yeah, there's clearly needs to be some therapy going
Right.
on. But just really being an expert, so we can really continue to unpack this conversation because it is an important conversation as we continue to navigate our health journeys.
Hey, it's Jessica. Thanks for listening to Girl Call Me. If you have something to add or a story to share, come on over to Instagram or Facebook and join the conversation. Also, make sure you follow and subscribe Girl Call Me. You don't want to miss when we release new episodes. Thanks for listening.